Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of What Do We Do Now? A conversation about the live events industry. Today I'm joined by Kim. Say hello, Kim.
Hello.
Kim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? How did you get your start in the live events industry?
Yeah, my name is Kim Myhre, and I have an agency called Experience Design where we work with agencies and their clients to um, help develop new approaches to experience design that are more empathetic and more human centric and based on those kinds of principles. Um, I kind of guess I got I've been in the events business a fairly long time. And I think I got my start primarily because I worked in publishing and I
Yeah.
worked in marketing in publishing. And back in the day, publishers, print publishers, magazines used to believe that every print publication was an, an event waiting to happen. You had basically had a defined audience with common interest. You had advertisers who were buying ad pages, um, and you had the brand equity of the publication name. So if you were Horse and Hound magazine, you could, in theory, have your annual Horse and Hound event,
Yeah.
and you could pretty much count on your readers being there and your advertisers sponsoring it. So that's kind of how I got involved in the very beginning, and that sort of led me because I worked for a publisher of technology publications. I ended up being involved in a trade show called Comdex, which is of course no more. But back in 1999, 2000, I was involved in that. I was the head of that event, and it was huge. It took over Las Vegas basically.
Wow.
Uh,
What sort of size was it?
well, it was about 1.2 million square feet of floor space,
Jeez.
6,500 exhibitors, and the numbers were always fudged, but somewhere around 200,000 attendees in Vegas. It
Wow.
was ginormous.
Colossal. Yeah, yeah.
It also
And
took place in Chicago and Atlanta
okay.
and Toronto and Vancouver and also in 20 other countries around the world. So pretty massive uh, event. And but of course it had its life cycle, and
Hmm.
because in a way it became too big, and
Okay.
you had to start questioning like what was it really about. IT had become so specialized. There were networking events and software events and
Hmm.
storage events.
Hmm.
So that the it became a difficult proposition. How do you find the seven people you really want to talk to as an
Yeah.
exhibitor, and when you have 200,000 people wandering around? So it ultimately, and again, this is back in 2002. They made an attempt to actually take it online,
No
and it
way. Wow.
was Comdex Virtual. Yeah, and
Very cool. I
I was
guess as
actually
a
talking to
tech
the guy
business.
yesterday who actually did it. Who actually created it. I had a phone call with him yesterday.
Hmm.
It was pioneering in its time, frankly, but it was very avatar based, and
Hmm.
it was clunky. I mean, the exhibition stands were essentially product specs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was not what we would put up with today in terms of an online experience. But again,
No.
I think it does make a point actually that when you used to think about if you think about events as a broadcast medium, that is reaching as many people as possible. And
Hmm.
and I know in my career, it's always like how many people were there.
Oh, I just lost you. Hold on a moment. Can you still hear me all right? Give me a nod if you can still hear me. Just lost your audio. Just bear with us a moment. We'll be right back. Um, Hello, and I think I've got him back. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Kim, can you still hear us all right?
I can't hear you.
Wonderful. I think some of the problems we're having these days with the infrastructure are just absolutely incredible. Every single platform seems to be buckling under the strain at the moment. But sorry, you were just saying about Comdex Virtual.
Yeah, Comdex Virtual. It was clunky, but I guess the point I want to make is um, those kinds of experiences were possible, even back in 2002. So,
Yeah.
what we're dealing right now is not necessarily rocket science.
And so would you say that was your favorite job working for the Comdex or for Comdex, or was there is there some of the other stuff you've done since? What else have you done since then?
Yeah, no, I think the working for Comdex was interesting and challenging, but I think the agency world was where I think I always felt most comfortable, and partly because again, I never really thought of myself as an events person. I always thought of myself as a marketing person.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
and events being part of marketing discipline, not a thing until itself. So so for me, that was much more interested in the engaging with clients around the why they're doing
Mm.
what they're doing, what are they trying to achieve, how are they, what other things are they doing besides events,
Yeah,
how does all that fit together, are there better ways of doing what they're doing, more efficient ways, more effective ways,
yeah.
um, are we embracing new things coming down the pike in terms of new technology opportunities and new ways of engaging with our audiences. I mean, those kinds of things are the things that have always, primarily intrigued me.
Mm.
And
And so
it
after
is
Comdex, where did you go on to from there?
well, when I left Comdex, I went on to George P. Johnson. Actually, I was
Okay.
at GPT for 10 years
Yeah.
as the MD here in Europe, um, and great experiences there, working with some amazing clients, including an opportunity to do the 2012 Olympics and some really big stuff there,
Mm.
which was really fun. So that was really exciting. And I think the thing that about that agency experience is we really did over time, with all good intentions, transition to a much more strategic um, approach with our clients, partly driven by
Mm.
our clients who are really smart clients.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so that we really did start to build portfolios of marketing activities and where events fit and how we were measuring those activities
Hmm.
and how they complemented other marketing initiatives. So I think the strategy and creative side of the business is the part that I have always kind of been drawn to, and it's the thing that excites me the most about this business, basically.
Perfect. So there was Comdex, then George B. Johnson, and then you kind of went on and set up a couple of agencies after that as well, right?
Yeah, I left George B. Johnson and went to Freeman. And
Hmm.
Freeman was, with all very good intentions, wanting to set up a more strategic, more creative hub
Mm.
uh, within the business, and they called it Freeman XP. I launched the European operation and the office in London, and I was the first employee. And I think working out
Cool.
of, yeah, I think it
Employee
was
number
actually,
one, very good.
yeah, I'd hired a really amazing group of people, some extremely talented folks on the
Mm.
strategic, creative, and operations and production side. So we had a really strong team,
Mm.
and working with a lot of primarily Freeman's U.S. clients coming to Europe,
Yeah.
which is a great opportunity when when you're setting something up in Europe. You have that great U.S. client base already existing. That's
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of magic. Anyway, I did that for a few years. There's a lot of, again, like all good intended big organizations, you know, innovation has a lot of, as they say, innovation is inherently um, unknown. You don't actually know what you're going to get at the
Mm.
end of
Hmm.
the end of the innovation. So it's really hard to predict and it's really hard to judge. And big organizations, and to no fault of their own, I think it's just the nature of things, are driven by their quarterly, financial reports, and they
Hmm.
you lose a client here, and then that creative strategist you were going to hire doesn't get hired. You're constantly making those kinds of trade-offs. So it's very hard, I think, for large organizations to innovate and to transform themselves because they have this infrastructure that they need to move forward and they need to pay for. And the best way to do that is do exactly what they do, just more efficiently
Yeah.
uh, and cheaper, and they make more money off of it. So I think lots of companies and lots of agencies
Mm.
who all with good intentions to transform themselves into more strategic and creative organizations
Mm.
struggle. I mean, it's
And now especially, like, an incredibly challenging time for large organizations to try and do some of that change. I mean, when did it hit you that things were going to change in such a significant way?
well, I don't think it hit me. I think things have been changing all along, and I think I've generally been an advocate for change
Mm.
and for innovation and for really thinking about what we do in different ways, and
Mm.
partly driven by the needs of our clients, which are changing, and their audiences are changing. And some of the methods that we're using today in the events world, in particular, man, I was at a trade show in January where there were women walking around dressed like cats with big long tails. I thought
Wow.
I thought I had been sent back to the '60s or '50s or something.
Gosh.
So I'm
But
just
just the
saying,
fact that that kind of thing is still happening is
it's
just
still happening.
unbelievable, right?
It's still happening. Yeah. So change, comes hard because the business model, which is to sell lots of square meters on the floor,
Mm.
which is where the money gets made, overrides any sense of content or strategic value. And I think that's, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying think that's we all struggle with that in our business. So, but these changes have been coming for a long time. I mean, you think about it, half the world's population's under 37.
Hmm.
Most people now with tremendous buying power don't remember a time before the mobile phone or the laptop computer or I mean, um, people don't need to go to live events to network. They don't need to go to live events to get product information. They don't
No.
need to go to live events to see speakers or to get content or to learn something.
Mm.
And they don't need to go to live events to be entertained. So the reality of it is that we have tools available to us today which completely change our relationship and in some ways our tolerance level
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
what the live experience really is. And for those trade shows, many of them who are still doing the same thing they were doing 20 years ago, I mean, I just feel bad for them. Ultimately, the market is going to sort of, you know, it's going to pass them by.
Yeah.
And
So what do they need to do? What do agencies need to do to survive in the new normal?
well, I think in some ways, this is a tremendous, although tragic, an opportunity to sort of overcome the tendency for us to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it's kind of broke. So now's a really good opportunity to sort of fix it. And I think,
Yeah.
really now focusing in on what do clients really need um, to achieve their business objectives,
Mm.
who are their audiences, and how do they want to engage with brands, will give us an opportunity to maybe be less myopic in how we think about what we do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's, there's that great article that was in the Harvard Business Review, I don't know, 20 years ago called Myopic Marketing Myopia, I think it was called. But anyway, where it talked about, and when you think about yourself as a product, your identity is focused on what you do.
Mm.
You have the opportunity to become obsolete. When you focus on what value you provide, you can, in theory, transform. And the
That's such
example,
such such a good point. Just to pause on that for a moment. So,
yeah,
every single agency is currently is putting out there, this is what we do. We do virtual platforms now. We've been doing this for years and shouting about it. But you're saying like, forget all of that. Focus on what your unique value is.
yeah, and I think this is the issue too. I mean, the example that they use in that article is the American railroads. It's kind of, they say the American railroads fought so hard to keep railroads alive, they didn't realize they were in the transportation business. And I think that's true of the events world.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so hard to keep the events the way we've always done them, the way we know them, and sustain that we're not looking, like what could I do differently? And because many of these organizations and these agencies have had to furlough and downsize and go back, this is a tremendous opportunity to say, what do we want to be when we come back? And I also think
yeah,
agencies also, in my view, and I've been I'm on these now, you know, Zoom calls all day,
yeah,
pretty much every day. And what astounds me is the amount of sort of bad information out there of people
yeah,
from the events industry saying, "Don't worry, it's all going to go back to normal. We're going to come out of this thing, and we won't even remember it." It just boggles the mind that so many people want to go back. Um, I
yeah.
just never really, I've never really been interested in going back.
They want to go
Just
back
like
to a conference or a trade floor
I
or
don't really. I
something.
think going forward sounds a lot more exciting and a lot more fun. So I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
reimagining what we can be and what we can do and how we can engage with our clients in new ways moving forward, for me, sounds way more exciting.
Definitely. I mean, do you think it's possible for the traditional events industry to transform itself in such fundamental ways? Some of these organizations are huge organizations now.
Yeah, I think. Well, it depends on where you are in the food chain. To be honest, I think, um, you know, if it's booking airline seats, you're probably not doing very well right now.
No.
Um, Whereas, if you have a relationship with your client where you are focused on strategic thinking and creative and brand development, you're probably in a much stronger position. Um, and some agencies are a mix of that. So
Yeah.
parts of the business are not going to do very well and may or may not come back. Parts of their businesses, they can sustain, but they're going to have to move forward and change. And that would be my view.
So if you were starting an agency from scratch now, today, what would you create?
Well, I think, again, to design the future agency requires, the kind of, design thinking that we all are talking about these days, which is, a little bit of empathy. I think, we need to kind of walk in our client's shoes,
Yeah.
um, and really get to understand what our clients are trying to achieve, and make sure that we're really clear on that. And then, and also for clients and for agencies, understanding audiences and how audiences are changing,
Mm,
is going to be really, really critical. We have a really tech-enabled audience out there today,
yeah.
that it's a fast. People have high expectations around experience, and uh, we're having. Someone said the other day, I was on a call. Someone said we're at a period now where we have permission to thrill and patience for failure. That's exactly what they said.
Oh
We're
wow.
doing
Yeah.
these. Yeah, we're doing these really crap Zoom calls, but and people are saying, "Oh shit, it's terrible," but it's all there is. So let's
Let's
dial it
just
in.
roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The cocktail party really doesn't work all that well, given that I don't have any cocktails here. But anyway, so so I think, it is going to be that. It's going to be that really empathetic approach to understanding the problem, asking why. Why are we doing what we're doing? What's the purpose of it all? What's the outcome? And then designing, the right kind of approach to achieve, um, those outcomes is going to be the key to success.
So building an agency that can cope with the change, but also that can support the client through the change that they're going through.
Yeah, I think that's right. And again, as I say, it's been difficult for agencies to do that because
Mm,
that if you're known for logistics, for example, you're known for logistics, so it's very hard to go in there and go, "Hi, we're now strategists and creatives."
yeah, yeah,
It's very hard to have that belief. It's also, you know, agencies tend to be busy because they work, one arm, one man down kind of thing all the time.
mm,
It's you're always slightly short of staff, so.
yeah,
Um, you win you pitch on something, you win it, and you run around with your hair on fire, and all those big ideas about you run around with your hair on fire, not making any money, and all those big
yeah.
ideas about how you're going to move up the food chain, kind of quickly go out the window. So it's a challenge, and in some ways, this might, as I said, this may be an opportunity for folks to sort of slow down. Don't be afraid, rethink around the value proposition, and then move forward.
Fantastic. What do you think are kind of the essential concepts around trying to communicate at the moment? Everyone's trying to communicate as effectively as possible. Going into the kind of next September season of events, there is going to be so much noise out there, and creating compelling content is going to be very, very challenging. But are there certain elements of that, of what people should be thinking about as they start to put together the next kind of season of communication, the next season of marketing propositions, that they should be focused on?
Yeah, it's a it's a really interesting one. One of the discussions I was in yesterday,
Mm,
someone was saying, "Hey, these Zoom events, these virtual events, we need to make them more like TV." I was like, "Okay,
mm,
that's really insightful." But here, yes, of course, you need to make them entertaining and engaging, and that maintain people's interest. And it reminds me of a
mm,
story. I used to work when I worked in publishing. I worked for a guy by the name of Pat McGovern. He was the chairman of IDG, and he used to tell this. I was with him actually at an event in New York City, called Seabold Seminars. It was an event about the online publishing business way back
mm.
when it was first emerging. And Pat got up on stage. He said, "It's been really interesting here today because people are all coming up to me saying, 'Pat, don't worry. This online publishing thing is never going to take off. I mean, who wants to read looking into a little screen?'" Uh, that'll never happen. And he said that worried me. And when I was hearing this, it started worrying me because I was thinking,
Mm,
when television first came on the scene, everybody at radio was going, "It'll never take off. Who wants to watch a person reading
mm,
into a microphone?" Um, and I think that's the catch here with this whole online experience, business, is that we're trying to project the past onto a new platform without understanding its ultimate potential.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it will get better. It will get sharper. It will. We will have, more multi-sensory experiences and use sound and visual better and embed content in better ways. And we'll be doing that sort of stuff. There's no question about that. And even if it's because we have to
Yeah.
now,
Right now we have to, right? We
right.
have to change.
It will get better. There's no question about there. For those of you who are not, who believe, we landed on the moon. Um, it's possible to accomplish some pretty amazing things, and I'm pretty sure there's some guys out there who can fix Zoom.
Absolutely. So you're saying, focus on the client, focus on their needs. They're going through huge amounts of change, and we've got to be in touch with what that is and how to support them. You're kind of talking about defining as an agency or defining as a business what your value is and what value you bring, not just kind of turning around and shouting about the fact that you can turn out some kind of gimmicky offering that isn't a live event, but maybe somehow can replace some elements on it. And the other key thing you're saying is that focus on why, focus on that why of what you're doing rather than just the what of what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be really critical. And again, I don't think it's a new requirement. I think it's always been true that change has been happening, and businesses are the first to resist change. Because
Mm.
it's a negative on their model and their infrastructure and
They get
their
comfortable, right? We're in the
yeah.
luxury end of the live events business in kind of the corporate sector, and it gets comfortable very, very quickly, doesn't it? So
Well,
we have to
comfortable and
challenge.
yeah, comfortable and trapped. I
Yeah.
mean, in some ways, I
Mm,
understand it. I see it. It's businesses are all about profit,
mm,
and that's not about investing in things you don't know if it's going to work or it's not work. It's not about generally taking risk. It's not about investing in the future. It's about right now in our financial report. So it,
mm,
it is complicated. There's
mm,
no question about that. And I think anything that can help us to be in a position to rethink what the future potential might be,
mm.
it could be times like this.
Yeah. So making sure you're having that strategic conversation rather than the
Totally.
tactical or the operational one, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a specialist in pandemics either, but I would imagine that if people are sitting there saying just a few more weeks and we'll all be back to normal, are probably deluding themselves.
Mm,
Um, Even if we didn't have COVID-19, in 3 or 4 months, we still wouldn't be back to normal. We'd be three or
mm.
four months down the road. Change is infinite, and I think that's something that all organizations need to find a way to embrace, and that includes the events world and the events agency business.
So people just need to get on and change.
Get on and get focused. Right? Exactly. Let's as the guy in the film The Martian said, let's engineer the shit out of this thing, and come up with a solution.
That's brilliant. So just we're running out of time here, but just to kind of in conclusion, is there a kind of a what's the best piece of work advice you've ever been given, or do you have a particular message that we've not kind of covered that you have for the live events community?
Yeah, well, I kind of have this thing. In fact, I have a rock right here. I literally have a rock.
No way. Nice.
See it? That says right there,
Oh, very good.
"Be the change you want to see," and that's my advice.
That
Each of us, be the change that we want to see in this industry.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic place to finish. Thank you very much, Kim. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I hope this conversation has been useful and is helpful to people. We'd love to hear from different people across the industry. I've talking to producers, we've talking to show callers, talking to business leaders. We'd have loved to have spent longer, I guess, talking about leadership as well with Kim during these really challenging times. But get in touch with me if you'd like to join another conversation in future. And thank you very much, Kim. Say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.